Hi, everyone. Thanks for showing up. I'm Debbie Schwartz, founder of Road2College and the Paying for College 101 Facebook group. Just making sure everybody can get in from the waiting room. Today, we're going to talk about merit scholarships and how to find them, what they are. I would love if people could put into the chat where you're from and what year in high school your student is in. I would hope and expect a lot of people here have a junior or maybe younger in high school. So just would love to know who's here before we get started. Great. Yep, juniors. This is recorded. This is actually officially a meeting as opposed to a webinar. So I only share that because if you truly want to unmute yourself and ask a question, I'm all for that. I think it makes it easier to communicate. And the other thing is that if you would like to share your video, it's also always nice to see people's faces instead of just the black boxes. But I understand whatever is best for you because you might be doing other stuff, but a few people have put their videos on, so I appreciate that. And a link to this will be sent tomorrow in a follow-up email. So hopefully you can stay, but for whatever reason you can't, you'll get the link tomorrow. And of course, if you want to look it over and share it again or with somebody else, you'll have the link. And throughout, I'm going to share slides. That's the way I like to kind of share information and teach people things. I will also keep looking at the chat. If you want to ask questions, I might stop while I'm going through my slides to answer some questions, but if not, I'll go at the end and look through as many questions as I can. Because I'm doing this one during the day and it's lunchtime, I'm going to try and hold to the 1 hour. Maybe I'll go over a little bit. When we do webinars at night, we honestly usually just go until whenever we can answer questions, but daytime we try and kind of keep it more concise. Okay, wow, thank you everybody for sharing where you're coming from, and lots of juniors, which completely makes sense. I'm actually so glad you're here, and I'm really glad I see some sophomores. That's even better because the earlier you start, at least to understand the landscape, the better. Okay, so I will get started. I'm going to share my screen. Hold on. Okay, I'm sharing. And if somebody could just give like a thumbs up in the chat, making sure, thank you, or in the video, or in your seeing your video, that's helpful too. Good. Okay, so we can all see. As I mentioned, I'm going to talk about what merit scholarships are. I'm also going to give a little background for those of you who aren't familiar, and you may not be if you're juniors and particularly sophomores, about what your SAI is. I'm not even going to define it now because we'll talk about it later, and your college budget, because understanding merit scholarships is important, but you actually have to understand your financial situation to make sure you should be looking for merit scholarships, or just understand how your finances may or may not play into merit scholarships. So we're going to talk a little bit about financial aid policies and how you should understand what colleges are doing and why they're giving money for financial aid versus need-based aid. And then we're going to talk about how you use this information to start searching and building a balance list. And then I do have a tool that we've created. It's been now about 4 years. It's called Insights, and it helps kind of pull all of the information together that is out there. A lot of it is public, some of it is licensed, some of it is information we've collected, and just makes it easier for people to search. So I'm going to share that as well. So why are merit scholarships so important, and why have they become even more important every year? And again, I'm taking a few steps back, but to me, it's all related to ultimately how do you pay for college, right? I mean, I'm not even going to get into, we know college has become very expensive, but there's really 3 main buckets that people can use their money from to pay for college. One is family contributions. Obviously, everybody's got different levels. You've been able to save, or we're only able to start saving late. But basically, you have maybe, hopefully, some savings, whether it's in a 529 or whether you're taking it from, other buckets. Sometimes people have other family members who can contribute, grandparents, maybe a grandparent has even created a 529. And then there's, if you don't have money from savings, or even if you have money from savings, a lot of times people are able to take from income. So they're all able to cash flow some additional money to pay for college. So that's everything that's coming from, the family, whether you've saved it already or whether you're kind of trying to use it from current income. And then there's a bucket called free money. And then there's borrowed money. I'm just gonna, somebody might have, okay, unmuted themselves. I'm just muting that for the background noise. So free money is a lot of what we're going to talk about today. There's different types of free money. There is free money that comes from financial aid, which is based on your need, and we'll talk about that a little bit. There's free money that comes from merit scholarships, which is the bulk of what we're going to talk about, and those are the scholarships that the colleges are offering students. There's definitely free money that comes from private scholarships, and there's free money that comes from government grants. Most of the government grants are related to your income level and usually geared towards lower income families. And then from these two buckets, from family contributions and free money, if you still do not have enough to cover the costs of whatever college your student is interested in going to, then you have to decide, how am I going to cover that gap? And covering that gap really comes down primarily to two areas. There is a third. There is government loans. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of families, particularly as you're starting the process, you may or may not realize how much money your student can borrow on their own without a cosigner from the government. It's not that much. The first year, the student is capped at $5,500. And then it goes up sophomore and junior year to $6,500, and then senior year to $7,500. So that's per year. That's all the money your student can borrow on their own without a cosigner. I only bring this up now is because we see so many questions or comments from parents that say, oh, my student will just have to borrow it on their own. Whatever they can't get, they'll just have to go to the lenders. And it's just not going to be the case. They're just not going to be able to borrow that money. And I don't want you to be surprised too late in the process. So understand that early and factor it in. And then parents can borrow from the government. That's called the Parent Plus loan. And that's all on the parents. The student doesn't have any financial obligation. And then the other source is obviously going to private lenders. And at a private lender, you and your student can borrow up to the cost of attendance. So you can fill whatever that gap might be. And again, you can do it two ways, but primarily a student is going to be on the loan. But again, there's no lender that's going to just lend the money to a student without a cosigner. So a parent needs to be involved with a private loan. And then there are some lenders that do what we call private parent loans, where they are just providing kind of student loans, but only to the parent, and only the parent is involved. So that's a really quick summary. We go into a lot of more detail, but I like to bring it up now because if you're estimating what college is going to cost you, and you are okay that your student might borrow at least the federal student loans, then incorporate in the $5,500, but don't assume that they're going to be able to find a lender that's going to be able to just lend them the money without having a parent or some sort of creditworthy adult involved. Okay, I kind of mentioned it, but I'll just say it again. The reason why I focus so much, and a lot of people do, on the college list is, to me, it's the most pivotal point in the college application or admissions process, because this list is really going to drive so many things going forward. It's going to drive your family's final costs of college. I had somebody actually write me today, and I get these messages several times, and somebody said and it was related to the Facebook group Paying for College 101. And they said, I thought this group was all about paying for college. Why do we talk so much about college admissions and where people should apply to college? And it just, I just kind of gave a methodical answer going back, is that your cost of college, right, is related to the college your student enrolls in. The college your student enrolls in is related to the colleges that they apply to. The colleges your student applies to is related to the college that's on your student's college list. So, and then what colleges your student can put on their college list actually ultimately relates to what their high school profile is like and what activities they did, in high school and, to make them who they are. So this idea of just talking about how to pay for college, if we really wanted to narrow it just to that, then all we would be talking about are loans. But if we want to kind of pull it further, earlier when we should be talking about it, we should be talking about how you create your college budget, how, your student, what they want to aim for, how well they do in college and how that relates to other monies they're going to get, and then ultimately what colleges are going to be on your college list and how you search and you create that list. So that's why creating the college list is so important for me. It's going to determine your cost of college. It's going to determine obviously where your student gets accepted. And this isn't so minor, but you're not there yet as families with juniors. It's also going to determine how much work your student's going to have to do. And that work relates to how many essays they might need to fill out. And of course, there's something called the Common App, and people think, oh, well, my student's only going to have to fill out one essay. It really depends on which types of colleges your student applies to. And even though most colleges use the Common App, most colleges use that main personal essay, a lot of colleges are asking for supplemental essays, and that's when it starts to add up. And then if your student is applying to honors programs or maybe some merit scholarships, which we'll talk about, have their own applications, you can see how all of these start to increase. And it's not inconceivable that a student might have to write 5, 10, even more essays, again, depending on the type of schools that they are applying to and the programs within those schools. So that's just an FYI to kind of get you prepared and your student prepared. And again, it's why kind of come the springtime and summertime, we try to impress on students and families to start the essay process early, because you're going to potentially be inundated with more essays than you expected. Okay, a really quick overview. There's lots of different ways that people kind of, call merit. It's merit aid. It could be called merit scholarships. And even at its most, rawest form, it is a form of a tuition discount. So you might hear all of those phrases. They all apply to the same thing. It's basically a college offering your student money in exchange for and it's money that's not tied to financial need. And, obviously it's in exchange for hoping them to bring them to their college. If you can think about it as colleges are a business, and just like you might be, you might work in business, colleges are looking at how can I spend my money to get the best return. And so merit scholarship money is usually geared towards the type of student they want to attract to that college. In a lot of cases, it's given towards students that are on the higher end of academically of the type of student that might want to apply and enroll at that college. So that's why it's important that you look at, and we're going to talk about this, colleges where your students' stats are at what we call the top percentile. And usually it's the top 25 percentile, or your students in the top 75th percentile, different ways of phrasing it. But you want your student to be at the high end of the academic stats for that school if you want that school to be offering your student merit scholarships. If you're okay maybe paying the sticker price or not getting full merit scholarships, your student can and should be applying to schools where they might fit into the average or the 50th percentile. But if you really want to have a better shot at getting the merit scholarship money, you want your student to be applying to schools where their profile and their stats kind of put them at the top of what that school normally enrolls. Another actually benefit to merit scholarships as opposed to private scholarships, which I didn't really talk about, is that when your student is awarded a merit scholarship, it's generally awarded during this admissions process, right? So it's the high school to freshman time when colleges give out a lot of merit scholarships. They actually still give out merit scholarships to transfer students, but the bulk of their merit scholarship budget, I would say, goes to that incoming freshman. And that scholarship is renewable. So they're giving you a scholarship that is an annual amount, but they're expecting to give that scholarship to that student for the 4 years that they're in college. I just want to emphasize two things when I say it's renewable. A lot of schools have a minimum GPA requirement. Sometimes it's not a big deal. It could just be like a 3.0. Sometimes it is higher. Sometimes it's 3.5. And so when your student gets their awards, hopefully they will, some merit, awards in the, could be now, could be in the springtime next year. You just want to understand all the details about what they need to meet in order to have it renew. I only emphasize that, and we have other webinars where we talk about this in more detail, because the worst case would be that a family accepts that, or their student enrolls in a college. That college was affordable because the student got merit scholarships, and then somewhere during those 4 years, the student loses the merit scholarship. So all of a sudden, that affordable college became unaffordable because they didn't have that extra scholarship money. So you and your student want to feel comfortable. They can make whatever minimums are set ultimately at the school that they choose to enroll in. The other thing I wanted to emphasize about the scholarships being renewable, they're renewable for 4 years. I don't remember the stat offhand, but a lot of students don't necessarily graduate in 4 years. That's actually another thing to pay attention to when you're researching colleges, what their 4-year graduation rate is. Believe it or not, the graduation rate that a lot of colleges put on their website is the 6-year graduation rate, because that's the rate that the government mandates that they share. They don't have to put on their website the 4-year graduation rate. So when you're looking at graduation rates, make sure you understand, is this a 4-year graduation rate or a 5 or a 6-year graduation rate? And if you can't find it, ask the college for it. But anyhow, you want to obviously make sure and do your best with your student that they're graduating in 4 years, because that 5th year can be unbelievably expensive, especially, again, if your student went to that college and received merit scholarships, they're not going to receive it for the 5th year. Okay, I'm going to talk now about the different types of merit scholarships. These are not official labels. Honestly, these are just kind of groupings that I created over the years just to make it more easy for people to understand. But there's really like 3 types of merit scholarships that you come across. One are automatic, and I'll show you some examples. And basically what that means is your student doesn't necessarily have to do anything additional when applying to the college. That college is going to look at all the applications that they receive and decide whether or not they're going to offer merit scholarships. These types of colleges tend to also be more transparent in how they give out the merit scholarships. They might have a grid or a chart, and I'll show you too on their website. I mean, if a college shares their exact criteria of how they're offering merit scholarships, like I give them, I think it's great. I love that they can be that transparent. It just makes the process easier, right? Unfortunately, colleges don't have to do that, and so some do and some don't, and that's what we're kind of dealing with in this landscape. So I'll show you some examples of automatic colleges that provide automatic merit scholarships. Then there's a group that it's called competitive, and meaning they offer merit scholarships, but they're asking your student to do something more. So your student might need to apply to the honors program because maybe the merit scholarships are connected to the honors program. Or maybe it just might be an additional separate application that your student has to fill out. And again, it could be that there's an additional essay associated with it. So, and there's usually a different deadline associated with it. So that's kind of, again, I'll show you some examples, but I'm making you aware that there's those types of merit scholarships. And the last is that if your student has some sort of a talent, and it could be, music, art, theater, then there are definitely colleges that offer merit scholarships, and they don't necessarily have to be art schools. It could be other schools that are offering those types of scholarships. And the really important thing to be aware of with those types of scholarships, again, are deadlines. Usually there's a separate deadline for sending in a portfolio, a separate deadline for when you need to make an audition date by. And, again, it's the keeping track of deadlines. It becomes a real adulting skill for your student. And hopefully you probably need to be on top of that, but maybe this is a great, skill and lesson that they can learn, that the deadlines in this whole process are going to be very important. Okay, so here's an example that I've used for automatic merit scholarships. Just one example. There are several schools that show their charts and grids on the website. This happens to be from Miami University in Ohio. I've just been kind of tracking them since 2020. And you can see the grid at the bottom right. This is from the fall of 2020. And obviously it was pre-pandemic. At that point, a lot of schools were test required. And so they had on their grid both what SAT, ACTs that they were looking for and the GPA. And as you can kind of see the migration to the left to fall of 2021 and then fall of 2024 and then fall. This is, well, this is for the students enrolling in fall of 2020 fall and then students enrolling in fall of 2025. You can see, obviously, they took away the test scores because they were, they're not using them for their merit scholarships. They're just solely requiring or relying on GPAs. But you can see that from 2020 to 2021, the GPA cutoff changed. And you can see from 21 to the students enrolling for 2024 and 2025, again, the GPA cutoffs changed. This is, the college's prerogative. They obviously look at how things did the previous year. How much money did we need to use to attract that higher performing student? And can we kind of, keep increasing the type of student that we can attract with the money that we have? So they change these things. They tweak them from year to sometimes, year to year. Sometimes they keep them the same, but it's something you need to be aware of. So, I got to tell you honestly, the grid isn't out yet, right, for the students that are going to start in the fall of 2026, which are going to be your students. So, the best we can go on is the information we have, but it's something you might need to recheck as the information, as colleges refresh their information, which generally tends to happen over the summer. The other thing I wanted to point out here is that Miami University is using a weighted GPA, and they actually highlight that. That's kind of their footnote number 1. And I can't, honestly, I'd say a fair number of colleges usually use unweighted. So it's, again, something you need to be aware of when you're looking at the information. What GPA are they using and what GPA do I have from my student, that either the high school has provided or I might need to recalculate if I'm looking at that college. So it's just something that's important to be aware of. If it's not clear, which unfortunately in a lot of college websites, it might not be clear what GPA is being used, then it's a great and fair question to ask the college. Have your student, email the college admissions rep that they, might be for the region. And, it's just a good interaction to start having with the college. Okay, let me move on. So here's an example of competitive merit scholarships. And the 2 examples I actually show, one is from USC, University of Southern California, who actually I just started seeing, made their announcements yesterday for early admission, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So this is USC is on the left, and BU is on the right. So the reason why I point out USC is if you want merit scholarships from USC, you need to apply by November 1st. November 1st is also their early admission deadline. A few years ago, they actually didn't have early action. They don't do early decision. A few years ago, they didn't even have early action, but they still had November 1st as their merit scholarship deadline. And now they've made that early action. Their regular decision deadline is November 1st. So if your student applies December 1st. If your student applies December 1st, which they can, they just won't be considered for early action. They won't be considered for merit scholarships. So this is, again, where deadlines are really important, and understanding and reading what the deadlines are, making a great, spreadsheet for your student about which deadline that they're applying towards, and obviously making sure that they hit it. What just came out for USC, and I'm just kind of giving a really high level summary, is that they deferred a lot of students from early action. And, I mean, again, that's the college's decisions. I think in their case, they said they had too much. They had a lot of applications to get through, but what they did make known is that they accepted students that were going to receive merit scholarships. So they kind of obviously made that decision. They probably went through and picked out the students that they felt were deserving of the merit scholarships that they wanted to offer, accepted them as part of early action, and then deferred a lot of other students. But I just kind of bring that up because they made it a point and said, your student's going to be reconsidered in the regular decision, but they're not going to be receiving merit scholarships because they were deferred. So that's just an example where the deadline made a difference. It may not have gotten your student merit scholarships, but you won't be considered for any merit scholarships if you don't make that November 1st deadline. BU has a December 1st deadline, and the only reason I also highlight BU is because they are a test optional school, but they kind of say, and they admit that the test scores are not required for merit scholarships, but they are giving you a hint by sharing the test scores of the types of students who receive merit scholarships there to give you an idea of the caliber of student that they're looking for to offer their merit scholarships. So I know there's probably a question about are test scores, even for a test optional school, required for merit scholarships? There's no black or white or blanket answer. Some schools actually do require the test scores for merit scholarships. They hopefully should make that clear on their websites when they talk about merit scholarships. Other schools still claim that it is that they don't require test scores for merit, and all we have to do is go by their word. So, but I would, just as a double check, obviously check the school's website to see around merit scholarships, are they asking for test scores? And if they aren't, again, it's another great question your student can ask admission. Hey, I'm really interested in the school. I'm really interested in making sure that I can, at least be competitive for merit scholarships. Do I need to have a test score to apply for merit scholarships? Or let's go further. Don't know if they'll provide this information, but you could ask what percentage of students who get merit scholarships actually have submitted their test scores. Again, don't know if they'll share that information, but there's no harm in asking. Okay, here's where I'm not going to say backtrack, but I'm going to switch to a different topic for a minute because it relates to knowing a little bit more about whether you and your family should be looking at merit scholarships. It's a topic I call it Know Your Numbers, right? So these are all the numbers related to figuring out what college is going to cost you. The first is cost of attendance. That's kind of the official highest number that it should cost you, that the college, again, is mandated by the government to share on their website. That includes tuition, room and board, and other additional fees, and some estimates for travel costs. Another important number is SAI, and that is called the Student Aid Index. This is what was renamed by the government last year. You guys probably aren't even aware, but it was something called EFC, which was around for a very long time. And basically, this is the output of when you fill out the FAFSA, and this is what the government is saying. They changed the word to an index because they wanted to give the impression that they are somehow, and they are, kind of ranking your neediness. So the index, so if your SAI is 30,000 and somebody else is 20,000, obviously what that's saying is you have less need to go to college versus the family that's 20,000. The reason why I point that out is because I don't want people to think that the SAI number that they ultimately get from the FAFSA is the number that they're going to pay for college. It has an impact on how much they might pay for college, but in a lot of cases, it is not what college is going to cost you. So it's a number that the colleges use to figure out, again, how needy you are and whether or not what type of aid they should offer you, if they're going to offer you any aid at all. And you can actually estimate your SAI now. I don't have the link in front of me to share, but if you Google federal government SAI estimator, they have the estimator, and I would encourage everybody with a sophomore and a junior to go and do that, because again, that will you'll then be able to use the information in what I'm going to tell you about a little bit next, but you'll see kind of like how needy you're going to fall on this spectrum. And obviously the lower you are, and particularly, if you're in this, the index actually starts at negative, I think 1600, and families that fall in the negative range and slightly very low positive are going to be eligible for Pell Grants. That's the government, money. And then the higher up you go, the less eligible you are for federal aid, and you may be eligible for college, financial aid. But the higher up you get, the colleges are going to say, you don't have a financial need the way we interpret it. And I want to kind of make that distinction, because of course we all kind of feel like college is expensive. I honestly would say up, to wealthy families, depending on how many kids you go to college, if you have to pay for the full price of college, it's become crazy. So, so just because the college and the governments are saying you don't have need, it doesn't mean that you don't feel like you have need. And so again, that's why you're looking for other ways to reduce the cost of college. Okay, so then there's this other term called family need, which actually kind of relates to what I was just saying. And that's a college looking at their cost of attendance, what your SAI is, and kind of what that gap is. And that's your family need. And some colleges will say, I'm going to help you meet that family need or cover that family need. And some colleges are not. And again, that's what I call their financial aid philosophies. And a college that's going to help contribute to your financial need is a college that has a financial need budget, and some colleges are much more generous than others in covering that need. And other colleges may say we don't have enough money to help you with your need, but maybe they're going to give merit scholarships. So again, this is where you have to understand kind of what each college is willing to do, and then you've got to match yourself to the college that fits with what you need. Do you have a big financial family need? You might want to be looking for colleges that are going to cover that financial need. If you don't have any financial need, which a lot of cases is the case for families that are looking for merit scholarships, that's why they're looking for the colleges offering merit scholarships. And finally, another important number is, what's your budget? And I could talk about all these other numbers, but if your budget is different than your SAI and it's different than the cost of attendance, you've got to factor that in. I can't guarantee that you're going to find a college that meets your budget, but at least know what your budget is. And as you go into the process, there might be some schools that can meet your budget. I'm hoping that when a family sets a college budget, that's enough that they're not going to need to actually borrow any loans. And so then you've got to decide, above your college budget, am I willing to take on debt? And if so, how much? And again, these are personal decisions, and I don't make any judgment on when people tell me what their family budget is and whether or not they want to have their student take out a loan or whether they're going to take out loans. We just help them make the best decisions. Okay, so here is a partner that I had worked with who put together this estimate so that you can get a quick idea of where you might fall, where your family might fall, based on the parent's household income and the parent assets. Again, this is a quick estimate. And I encourage people to do the government SAI calculator. But if you just want to get like an eyeball, whatever in the light yellow and the green is saying that that you might have the potential to get need-based aid from a college. Anything in red is basically saying there's no way you're getting need-based aid. The only way you're going to get money from a college is if your student is applying for merit scholarships. So I kind of like to share this just to kind of give again people a ballpark, kind of knowing what their income might be and maybe what their assets are. But you can see, quite honestly, families making really above 300,000, you're not going to get any need-based aid. Maybe around the 250 mark, you might, get some, and below 250, you might get aid, but it's going to depend on the college that your student applies to. So, and again, that like 300,000 and above, if you want to get any sort of, money, from a college, you're going to have to find the colleges that offer merit scholarships. And again, I just emphasize this. So you have to understand your situation, right? And then you have to understand how the colleges are giving out money, and then you have to match yourself to the right college. If this is a concern to you, there are, families that, want their families that might make, 350, and they know that they're not going to get need-based aid, but having their student go to a certain selectivity of a college is really important to them, even though so many times I have conversations and, the parent, and it's a great student, they might deserve academically to be there. And I say, have you looked at the numbers? Can you afford it? And they kind of always put that aside, or, it's this famous line, if they get in, we'll figure it out. I personally don't want to be in that situation, but, and I encourage you not to be in that situation, or at least have a plan. It's very disheartening to see people blindsided by costs at the kind of towards the end of the process, which I call is the March, April, May, June timeframe, when all of this can be understood much earlier as you guys are here, and you can make better decisions earlier on as to the types of schools your student applies to, so that you're not blindsided by costs at the end. Okay, so let me put these concepts together of the cost of attendance, your family's need, and the SAI. So the picture on the left is a family with an SAI of 30,000, and your family need is going to vary depending on the type of college, depending on the cost of attendance of the college that your student applies to. So in the first case, this family with an SAI of 30,000, your SAI stays the same regardless of what college you apply to. Your family need changes depending on the college you apply to. So the first college has a cost of attendance of 50,000, and in that case, that family has a $20,000 need. Okay. Second case, the family is applying to a much more expensive college, and the cost of attendance is 80,000. That family now has a financial need of 50,000. Okay, so now you understand what your need is. The next step would be to say, is that college, do they have a history of offering financial need-based aid, and what percentage of that need do they try to meet? So again, a college might say we give need-based aid, and they truly might, but they might say we only cover 50% of your family need. Okay, so you need to know that going in. So in this case, the cost of attendance of the 50,000, that college is saying we'll give you need, but we're only going to cover 20,000 of that need. So then you're going to be left as a family to make sure you can pay for the 30,000 plus the 10,000 that the college didn't cover, and so your net cost is going to be about 40,000. So that's the way you have to kind of start to look at figuring out and estimating your costs. Okay, so if I jump to the right, here's a family with a much higher SAI. I kind of purposely picked an SAI of 90,000, which covers the majority of colleges. Crazy enough, there are becoming more colleges these days that are over 90,000. But let's just say this, this SAI is higher than 95% of colleges' cost of attendance. So at the first school, the cost of attendance was 40,000. So, that college is going to say, hey, you can pay for this because your SAI is 90,000. I'm not going to give you any need-based aid, but maybe if that college offers merit scholarships, your student can be eligible for merit scholarships. And then at the second school, even though that it's a more expensive school of 80,000, again, because your family's SAI is 90,000, that college is again going to say, you can cover the full cost of the college. We're not going to give you any need-based aid. If our philosophy is we offer merit scholarships, maybe your student might be eligible for merit scholarships. Okay, now here's where your budget comes in. Nobody knows your budget except for your family. The college doesn't know your budget, so this is where you have to be disciplined. So you might decide that my family's SAI is 90,000, but but my budget that I'm willing to spend is $45,000. And there could be a lot of reasons for that. And again, there's no judgment. It could be, you might have multiple kids. You could have, 3 kids, 4 kids, who knows? It could be that this student wants to go on to a very expensive graduate school. They want to go to medical school. So you're trying to be as conservative as possible for undergraduate costs. It could be you have other costs in your family, related to supporting an elderly parent. Maybe there's a sibling with a disability. There could be many, many reasons, but it's important that you figure out what you're willing to pay. So again, how strongly you're committed to finding a college based on your budget, that's going to be, up to you. But you could look for, even though your SAI is $90,000, you could look for schools where that cost of attendance is $40,000, and hey, it's below your budget. You feel comfortable. You're going to be able to cover it all, and your student's not going to have to take out loans. But you might also find a college where the cost of attendance in this case is $80,000. Your budget's $45,000. But again, the college doesn't know that. All they know is your SAI is $90,000. So they're going to say, hey, you can, in theory, afford this college. We're not going to offer you need-based aid. But if you apply to a college where your student is eligible for merit scholarships, your student could get merit scholarships. And that could be the way that you reduce the cost of college closer to your budget. I just made this example. In this case, a student could get $25,000 in merit scholarships. You still have you still have a gap. You've got to decide in that gap between your budget and what the cost of college is, how you're going to cover it. Again, this is where you might say, my student's going to take out the $5,500 federal student loans, and then you're going to have to decide whether you've got other sources that you want to use to pay, or maybe you're going to take out a loan. But at least you've gotten closer to your budget. You also knew what your budget was, and you knew what you were aiming for. Okay. So let me look at some of the questions. So do we use adjusted gross income or total income before taxes? For you can use your adjusted gross income, and again, if you go to the federal estimator, they'll ask you this information. I'm just going to quickly answer some of these questions, but a lot of your questions, which is understandable, relate to the formula for the FAFSA and what colleges consider an asset. And it also depends on if the college is only looking at the FAFSA form or if the college is using something called the CSS profile. So there's a question here, does the parent asset value include the primary residence? For FAFSA, it does not include your primary residence. For a CSS profile school, which is, there's probably about, I don't know, about 300 to 25 of those types of schools. Those schools tend to have a lot of endowment money. They tend to have a lot of money that they're willing to offer to students, but because they have more money, they're also using a different financial aid form, which they're allowed to, called the CSS profile. And that form asks a lot more detailed questions. And that's the form that they use to kind of dole out the money that they have. So for a school that's going to ask you to fill out your CSS profile, they do ask you for the value of your primary residence. It varies as to, some schools just want to know it. Some schools actually kind of factor it into the calculation. I wish we had like a clear-cut answer. Quite honestly, the calculation that the colleges use for their CSS profile is private, and they don't share that publicly, but we do have a sense of which schools are using their primary residence as part of the calculation, and which schools just want to know that information. Okay, somebody's asking, generally, how are payments made? Do colleges offer monthly payment plans? I want to say it's not a guarantee, but most colleges have a payment plan. So you can do that. Otherwise, it is by semester that they're asking you, for payments, and depending if it's trimesters or quarterly, or so it's usually in the fall and in January time that the payments need to be made. Okay, let's go on. So my tips for if you're going to start the search, college search: know your SAI, which we just talked about, know your family budget, that's obviously sitting down, looking at your savings, looking if anybody else is willing to contribute. Is there any money that you can kind of cash flow and add to your budget? But I think it's important to know what your budget is. So I encourage people to do that. Then kind of once you know your SAI, once you know your family budget, you then have a better sense. Am I looking for colleges that can cover my family need and are going to give me need-based aid? Or is my SAI never going to fall into the category where I'm going to get need-based aid? So I'm going to have to look for colleges that offer my student merit scholarships. Doesn't mean that all of those colleges have to offer merit scholarships, but if you want a chance of lowering the costs of college, then you're going to need to look for colleges that offer merit scholarships. Otherwise, if your SAI is high, every college is going to expect, rightfully so, that you can pay the sticker price. So, okay, so how do you look for these colleges? And I'll gonna look at that for a minute. But my tip is, as you're starting the college search, is to put as many preconceived notions to the side. Start with what I call, cast a wide net. So what does that mean? Maybe don't be stuck to, and this is really probably more your student, but don't say I can only go to schools in New England, or I can only go to schools in Florida. Look at schools in those states, but broaden your search, because by broadening your search, you will find colleges that you weren't aware of, that provide good value, and that are most likely might be more budget friendly. I always include your state school. Your state school, or one of the state schools is probably going to be on the more reasonable side because of the in-state tuition. I also suggest when families are putting together colleges, kind of like probably like halfway through the process, is when your student at least has like 4 or 5 good colleges on the list that they are comfortable that they really want to apply to. Also think of, like, are there what I call leverage schools? Are there colleges that are very similar to the college that your student wants to apply to, but maybe might be more generous in aid? So colleges are competitive, and so if they know that your student is applying to a college that what they would consider in their peer group, or kind of a college that they don't want to lose out to, and when it comes time, actually this time next year, kind of in that January, February, March timeframe, when students get their offers, a lot of times students can go back to the college that they really want to go to and kind of show them offers from other colleges. So you have the better chance of kind of getting your college that your student wants to go to up their offer is if you have an offer from a college that's close in prestige, or or again a college that they would consider their competitor, to show them an offer from. So it's just a little something we try and do. And then the last is, again, try and have at least 1, definitely 2 financial safety schools on that list. So again, I gave you some examples. There are some families that are saying, I want to give my student the chance to apply wherever because they want to see if they want to get in. That's fine, as long as you also have a few schools on that list where your student has a good chance of getting in, and you feel comfortable that you can afford to pay that tuition. Okay, somebody's asking, can you get both need-based and merit if you qualify? Yes, a college can do that. They may overlap it a bit. They may they may reduce one amount for the other, but they can give you both. Okay, so I'm going to switch quickly to the tool that we developed that's going to help you kind of find these colleges, but I'll just share where the data comes from that we use. So there's 3 main sources. A really tremendous source of data is something called the Common Data Set. And every college puts this together. I'd say 98% of colleges share this information publicly, but you have to go to the college website to find the data. So if you wanted to Google any college that you're interested in, like say Google Tulane Common Data Set, it will actually bring you to a website that lists the most recent common data set, and might list 5 or 10 years back of common data sets. That's great. It's good information. I encourage everybody to look at a college's common data set, but it's just harder when you don't know the particular college that you're interested. Like, how do you search using that information, because it's not compiled anywhere? But that's what we did in our search tool. So we use the common data set data. We use a little bit of data from the government, which is called IPEDS. Again, it's a free source of information. They actually have a front-facing website called College Navigator. Through the College Navigator, you can get to some of the IPEDS data. You can't get to all of it. And if you want to really get to the IPEDS data, again, you can. It's free. It's just not the most user-friendly interface, and you get it in big data sets. So that's why we kind of are trying to make it easy. And then the third set is what we call crowdsourced data, and that's data we've been collecting probably now for the past 6 years, where we ask families to share with us the offers that they got. So there's no governing body that kind of looks at the data that the colleges share, both through the common data set and the government, and is verifying and saying, okay, yeah, you shared all that data with me. We're going to do an audit, and we're going to confirm that everything that you gave us was true. In most cases, it's been fine. There have been some cases in the news over the past few years. Columbia University was one example where they were fudging the numbers. But in any case, we ask people to share their real numbers of what they got. So a lot of times it coincides with what the college says the average amount is that they award. But the other thing that we can see when people share their offers is we get to see the stats of the students. It's all anonymous information. So we get to see what state the student was from, what SAT or ACT score they had, what the family's SAI was, to kind of see what the social economic background was. So that's information that is just ours that we include in College Insights. Okay, let me switch for a second, and I'm going to bring up the Insights tool to show you how it works. Okay, I think if somebody can just give me a thumbs up if you can see it, you should be able to. So this is, if you go to our website, which is insights.road2college.com. Thanks. This is what you'll come to, and you can create a free account. I have a paid account, so I'm just going to jump into that. But the free account gives you, you can go search in our Power search area. It gives you 5 searches. You can't see the results of all the searches, but you get a sense of how it works and what the results would be. You get to create one list. So it gives you a taste of how the tool operates. So let me sign in. Okay, so actually, if you're creating a free account and you sign in, you'd be walked through filling out a profile first. You wouldn't come directly to here, but then after you fill out your profile, you would come here. So you can search for any college, individually, if you know what the college is that you're interested in. We share links to the website, we share videos, we give stats. It's a lot of information you'll find elsewhere. Some of the things I think that are a little different are that we break out this information here in more detail. So we break out what the early decision rate is, and then what the regular decision rate is, what the percentage of the class got filled early decision, which again, all of these stats might impact both the type of school that your student applies to and when they apply, what phase of the process. So that information is in here. And then I mentioned the crowdsourced information. So this is, let's see, yeah. So this is, this is real time. We have families that are sharing that they've gotten offers for the academic year of 2025, 2026, when their student's going to start next year, or sorry, this fall. And this is, again, just from Tulane, I will say, just because these aren't, I mean, some of these are final, but sometimes people share that the student has gotten in, but they have not received the award information yet. So then they come back and they share that. So, you might kind of see some of these change. Usually, I would call it more final, like in the May timeframe, when people have gotten all of their numbers and they come back to share it if they've just entered an offer. But even to see who has gotten accepted is interesting, even if you don't have the offer information yet. But so this is the type of information you would see. We group it by the SAI grouping. Again, that just gives you a sense of socially, economically, what type of student is applying and what type of student is receiving aid. And right now, again, for this year, we only have like 7 offers in, but you can see that students at Tulane are getting in that range that aren't receiving need-based aid are probably getting between 10 and 15,000 for merit scholarships. We can go to a previous year too and look. And we probably have a lot more offers because there's more time to collect the offers. And again, you can kind of see the families that have an SAI above 60,000, they're not going to get need-based aid. And they actually, it ranged by some students got 15,000, 25,000, 20,000. I got to actually question this one. That seems too high. 30,000. And let's just go see one more thing. So let's look at what Tulane's average merit-based dollar amount is. So their average merit base is about 16,000. So we're seeing like merit awards well, for this year, we're kind of seeing it's close because what people have entered so far is about 16,000 to 15,000. Last year, we saw higher. So, they might be adjusting and they might, there might be a very, high stat student that they wanted to attract that they gave a higher award to. Okay, so that was if you look at an individual college. Well, let me go to, this is my personal favorite area called Power Search. This is how you can do what I call the, gosh, can't think of the word all of a sudden, but a reverse lookup type of a search where you don't have a particular college in mind, but you have the criteria that you want to use. So you can, again, put in an individual college if you know the college. You can obviously include majors. A lot of times, of course, majors are important. You can pick a region, although I really encourage people not to pick regions when they start searching. Or, you can pick, these are the government regions, Far West, Great Lakes. You can also pick, in addition to regions, you can pick states. You can pick multiple states, but I would stay away from location initially. And I would search by cost and by merit and by where my student is going to be the most attractive. So you can say, let me clear my search here. I must have something in here. You can search by if you want to search at a public school and what their out-of-state cost is, or at a private school and what their private cost of attendance is. My suggestion is that you do these individually. Don't click all of these at once. Somehow it's a little hard to separate the results. So I would look at, let's say I want to look at a private college that has a cost of attendance between 30 and 50,000. Okay, so that's what I'm going to get. And then if I wanted to, you can sort these colleges. They are automatically sorted alphabetically, but I can now sort them by the, by the actual cost and see which is highest to lowest, or go from lowest to highest. So that's one type of search you can do. If you are, set on a certain dollar amount that you want your student to receive, like a certain merit award, you can search by, I want my student to receive a 20 to, or maybe a 20 to, I'm just going to say 100,000. I want them to at least receive a $20,000 award. You can search based on what we call the school reported. So that's the school telling us what their average merit award is. And again, these are the results. And then you would have to sort this, I would, by average merit aid. Okay, so the Duke is claiming that it's probably one of the highest, that they give an average merit award of 77,000. But, big but here, but you have to look at this other stat of what percentage of students receive that award, and only 3%. So they're giving merit scholarships in that dollar range, but they're giving it to a very, very, very small number of students. So you have to constantly be looking at those two stats. Just scrolling down a little bit more, here's a College Web Institute or Albion College. They're being generous with their merit, and believe it or not, they give it to 100% of students who don't have need. That there are definitely those colleges, and that's where I would use the term a tuition discount. They're basically giving some sort of merit scholarship to every student who's applying and accepted. So that's one way of searching. Another is by the net cost. So you want to look at private colleges that offer merit, and your net cost, you want your net cost after merit to be between 40 and 60,000. So here are your results, and then you can sort these by any other way. I'll go back to sorting it by average merit. And so again, here's just an example. Bennington College, they give an average merit of 40,000. They're private, their COA is 85,000. So by net, it's 45,000. So it's in the criteria that you gave. So, then you might want to see, okay, let me click in to Bennington. Let me see what their stats are. And we have here the average SAT, the 75th percentile SAT. So if my student if I wanted to feel like, very high likelihood that my student's going to get merit from Bennington, they should have at least like a 1395 or a 32 to apply to Bennington. And then I would, the likelihood is that they would get that top merit award, and then your net cost would be in the area that you wanted it to be in. Okay, let me show one other way of using the search. Is by test scores. So I know we don't love test scores. I know a lot of these schools are test optional, but the reality is that the best data that they share is still about test scores. You're going to see, if you look through here, and you can even see it here, that a lot of colleges just don't, we can't force them, and they just don't share their GPA numbers. I don't know why. It's very frustrating. So we can't search and sort on something of data that we don't have. But for whatever reason, like a high number of colleges share their SAT and ACT scores, and they share them in all their percentiles. So that's like a great way of searching, even if your student's not going to submit their SAT. So I would still use it for searching purposes. And if by chance your student doesn't have an SAT or an ACT, and they're adamant and they're never going to take it, which is fine, then I would use their GPA, and there are conversion tables to estimate that a student with this type of GPA might have gotten this type of a test score. And again, it's just for the purpose of searching that will make it useful to have some number that kind of represents, your student in the SAT or ACT range. So I'm just going to, again, pick some numbers. Let's say my student got between 1,300 and 1,500, 1,300 and 1,400 on SAT. I want to search these colleges by where that SAT range is in the top 75th percentile, because those are the schools, if they give merit, where my student is going to have the best chance of receiving merit, because they're basically going to be at the top of the academic range that college is looking for. Okay, so these are my results. I got 197 colleges. Let me make sure I don't have any of the filters on. Nope. Where that SAT score of 1,300 to 1,400 is at the top 75th percentile. I can sort this list however I want right now. I can sort it by cost. I can sort it by merit scholarship, merit average, merit aid, which I think I might do. Okay, and now I can see that if my student has that test score range, or even if they're not going to submit it, but that's kind of generally where they how their profile looks, that these are the schools where I have the really best likelihood that my student's going to get the merit scholarship. And so now I would just start looking, more detail at these schools. So as you can see, I didn't put majors as a selection. I can now if I wanted to. I didn't put location because I wanted people to be open-minded about the results. And just from like a process standpoint, you can take all these results and add them to a list. If you click this button here, you could individually look at these colleges and add some of them to a list. I'm just going to go and show you what a list looks like once you've created a list, because there's more information you can use there. Okay, so here I've created lots of different lists. You can name them however you want. So I'm just gonna, I actually have a list that's kind of similar. It's a list where the student is at 1,200 to 1,300. These are schools where that's in the 75th percentile. They're private schools, and they happen to have ED and EA as part of the admissions process. Okay, so now this is my smaller list. That's 64 colleges that meet that criteria, but I created this list and I saved it and I named it. And then here we have more information in this table that you can look at. I shouldn't say more. It's all the information that's on the college detail, but it's in a table format. And you can now sort these schools on this list however you want. I'm going to go to a particular area that I think a lot of people like to jump to. And this is the those admit rates that I was talking about. So I can sort these admission rates. And this is on this particular college. And now I can look at what the overall admit rate is. I can search to see what the early decision rate is, what the early action rate is. And then also an important number is what percentage of the class that college fills early decision. So you can see, I'm just using some examples, High Point University fills 47% of the class early decision. That's a pretty high number. So your best chance is probably to apply early decision or early action there, because they're taking a bulk of colleges in that range. Honestly, a lot of the really selective schools that have early decision are taking probably also 48 to close to 60% of the class they are taking as part of their early decision process. So what that means is obviously that there are fewer seats left for your student if they apply regular decision, and there's more competition. This is not to force anybody to apply early decision. It's just so that you know what's happening and you know what type of competition your student is up against, depending on the timing of when they're going to apply. The other kind of columns that a lot of people look at that I kind of mentioned was this column about average merit award. Again, you can sort this in different ascending or descending. Susquehanna tends to be a very generous college for merit aid. They give on average 39,000. So there's going to be students that get above and below it, but that's the average. And they give it to 70% of the students who aren't eligible for need-based aid. So a lot of these colleges are giving the merit just to the student who is not going to get need-based aid. But there's a question earlier, but they're definitely, if you have a high stat student, or if you're a student that is applying to a school where you are at the top of the range and you also are eligible for need-based aids, the likelihood is that you will receive both. But a lot of these stats right now are geared towards showing you what percentage of the students who aren't going to get need-based aid are going to get the merit scholarships. So I'm over a little bit by like 10 minutes. I hope that this was helpful. Let me see if there's some quick questions I can answer. Do colleges see and report the SAT score if not submitted by the students? No, if the student does not submit the SAT score, there is no way that the college knows about it. So you can be rest assured about that. Okay, somebody asks, what is the co-op I'm seeing? Yep, so some colleges have very organized programs around, a co-op is usually the college has arrangements with businesses or other like outside organizations, and in some cases it's actually part of the program. To tell you the truth, my daughter went to Northeastern, and it's required that they do 2 co-ops. I thought it was an amazing opportunity. So some colleges incorporate it as part of their curriculum and requirements. Some colleges just like have it as arrangements, and students can pursue that. But I think that co-ops are a great way to get the real world experience, and they also tend to be longer than a summer. So in my case, my students was 6 months, and the colleges, make arrangements for that. Is it basically an internship? You can say it's an internship, but the colleges, sorry, the businesses that do this use these students because they know they're going to be there longer than how they might use them as a general internship. So again, if a student's going to be there for 6 months, they get much more real world experience, and usually the business has a program that they're doing this throughout the year, that they're bringing in lots of co-ops at different times. Thank you. I'm glad that you got value out of it, out of today's session. Somebody's asking how many colleges are included in the tool. Honestly, like over 3,000. We get data on all the colleges that share their information with iPads. So I got to tell you, a lot of the colleges you're probably not going to be interested in. If I had to, boil it down, it's probably 500 to 750 colleges where most of the people are doing their searching on. But we do have information on all the colleges that are 4-year colleges. What if your SAI changes from year to year? It's a great question. And your SAI is going to change from year to year. So if you're a family that is getting need-based aid, you kind of want to be careful about either changes that might happen financially in your situation that could significantly, increase your SAI. Because if you're getting the need-based aid, the college will adjust the need-based aid. So it's just something to keep in mind. Again, that's the benefit of merit scholarships. Whatever merit scholarship your student has gotten or been offered freshman year, they're going to get that same amount for the full 4 years. So there's benefits to getting need-based aid, but one of them is it's going to be reevaluated every year. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Let's see, there's another question here. What is your advice when deciding whether to submit SAT scores when it's just below the school's 25th? For example, if the 25th percentile is 470, do you submit a 410? So somebody's asking, this is a question that comes up a lot about, my student has a test score and we're deciding whether or not it's going to be beneficial to submit the test score. And I would definitely be looking at the school's test score percentiles, which this person is asking about. And to tell you the truth, I would not personally submit a test score that is in the 25th percentile or below the 25th percentile. I would submit a test score that's at the 50th percentile and above. Even best, obviously, the higher in the percentile, the better, but I wouldn't go below 50th percentile. Okay, everybody, I got a 1:30 meeting. I'm going to go grab some lunch. It was great meeting everybody. Feel free to send me questions I'm going to put this at support@road2college.com. It's easier if you send questions there. I can just kind of keep track of them. People send questions on social media. It's just so hard to kind of keep track of all the different ways that people can contact each other. So email is still my preferred way. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great weekend. I'm so glad you were here. I'm so glad you're getting started. It will make such a difference for you, for your student, and in the results that you're going to get. Take care. Bye.